So let's talk about vulnerability, real vulnerability, versus whining, complaining, or being a victim. If this is the first time that we meet, I'm Jonas Erb, and on this channel we talk about authenticity and personal growth. We provide tools and ideas that help you gain clarity, freedom, and fulfillment in your life. If you haven't yet, consider subscribing, just down here. So vulnerability is something that is a lot talked about in personal development books or seminars, and it's quite easy to get lost in whining or complaining and not really fully understanding what real vulnerability is all about. And so I want to talk about this a little bit and explore some different parts of vulnerability for you to see what actually is the difference between real vulnerability and whining and complaining. And so the first most important thing to really understand is that real vulnerability is something coming from your core. You're sharing your truth, what you're really feeling inside of yourself. You're allowing yourself to share that from that place inside of yourself. And you're just sharing it in order to share. You don't have any intention of getting anything back or of achieving anything by sharing that. But real vulnerability is just this present that you give to the other person of allowing the other person to really see you, how you are right now, what is going on inside of you right now. While whining or complaining or bitching, you have some kind of intention. You want the other person to do something, or you want the other person not to do something, or you want to blame someone else, or there's a lot of blame game going on as well in this whining and complaining. And it's easy to get lost in this victim kind of mode when you are kind of like just complaining about stuff, and by saying you want to be vulnerable but actually complaining. And that's what actually often happens in relationships, sometimes also in family or in friendships, is that people are using vulnerability, or that's what they think vulnerability is, in order to try to manipulate people into doing something or not doing something. So for example, if something makes me angry, or say something makes me jealous, and then I have this feeling, and instead of really allowing myself to feel the feeling, I talk about the other person, or say like, you made me feel that, you made me feel jealous, you made me feel angry, and you kind of put the burden on the other person. You're making the other person responsible for how you're feeling. And this is not real vulnerability. This is just complaining and wanting to use this to manipulate the other person into doing or not doing something. Real vulnerability would be to feel, let's say you were angry or you were jealous. You would allow yourself to just feel into that feeling, or maybe even sadness or whatever, fear, anything that's really going on inside of yourself. The true vulnerability would be to allow yourself to really feel that. Let's say something makes you really, really afraid, and you have this fear inside of yourself, and you're like, I would want to do that, but I have this deep fear. And you share what is going on inside of you. You share that fear, and you're really speaking from the feeling. You're connecting to the experience in your body, in your system. You're connecting to what's really there, and from that place you share your experience. That is real vulnerability. And the whining, complaining, victim thing would be to, instead of really connecting from the feeling, you would disconnect from the feeling, and you would say like, maybe making other people responsible, like they should have made it more safe, they should have made this and that, or you're basically making other people responsible for that feeling of fear, or you're blaming other people, or you're blaming whatever, and you're not allowing yourself to feel that. That is kind of fake vulnerability, or that is kind of wanting to use the way you feel in order to get something from the other person or from a situation. And so the important thing here to note as well is, real vulnerability doesn't feel like you have this burden and you put it onto the other person and now you have to handle this shit. But it's more of like, I allow myself to really experience what is going on inside of myself, and allow the other person to really see and connect to that, and allow the other person to see me as I really am. And this does usually what happens when you're really vulnerable from that place. What happens is that there is a connection being established between the other two people. And there is some kind of intimate connection coming up because you allow yourself to really be seen as you are. And the other person intuitively feels and appreciates you stepping into your truth and allowing the other person to see that. That is really real vulnerability. And that really has a strong power to deepen relationships, friendships, and it just makes you, in the end, it can be tough to actually be that vulnerable, but at the same time it kind of lifts away some kind of weight, because you don't have to hide, you don't have to hide yourself anymore, because you can share what's really going on. And you don't want anything from the other person by doing that, but you just kind of like, the burden is a little bit relieved inside of yourself. And that's why real vulnerability doesn't feel like you're putting a burden onto the other person. But then the fake vulnerability, or the complaining, or the whining, and the victim thing, it feels like the other person, the one that wants to be vulnerable, actually puts the burden onto you. It's like, I have this and I feel so bad, I feel so jealous, I feel so fearful, I feel so angry. And you kind of like put this burden onto the other person, like, oh, help me deal with this shit, this is so bad. Or you are responsible, or that person is responsible, and I'm such a victim, and my life is so bad. And it's this sick, like this sad, or this whatever energy, this heavy energy is actually getting even heavier, because you're basically making a drama out of what you're experiencing. And that drama makes it heavier. And so real vulnerability kind of is letting go of that drama and allowing the heaviness to dissolve by fully allowing the heaviness to be there. Whatever is heavy right now, if you allow yourself to really feel it, experience the heaviness and whatever is coming up with that, and whatever thoughts are coming up, if you allow yourself to relax into that and let the other person see that and let yourself experience that, then it's not something like a Pandora's box that you don't want to open, but you actually open it up and you see that it's just an experience, just something going on inside of yourself. And it really has a powerful potential to transform what's going on inside of yourself, to transform what's going on with the other person. And by just allowing yourself to experience that, you have a different way of kind of unloading that energy, or whatever fear, whatever is heavy for you. This is kind of like a new way of unloading that. And so what I would like to invite you to do is to check for yourself, how are you dealing with things that are difficult for you? Are you actually sharing them, or are you maybe holding them back? Maybe you would want to share, but you're actually afraid, or even suppressing that. Or maybe you are sharing what is going on, but you're sharing it from a place of wanting something back, wanting some maybe appreciation from the other person, wanting to not take responsibility and have someone else help me take responsibility. Or is there some blame going on, some shame game going on? Like you blame someone else, or is there anything like that going on? How do you feel when you share? How do you feel when you share from this vulnerable place? Are you feeling even heavier, and does the other person feel heavier? Is there a real connection being established, or is it more like it's just draining and draining? And just explore for yourself what's going on. And if you realize that you're not actually really vulnerable from this deep vulnerable place, but you're actually doing the blame game or victim or whining, then see if you can let go of that. And usually what happens when you're not in the experience is like you're disconnecting, you're kind of like getting up out of it, and you're letting all the thoughts that are coming up just run through, and like blaming and whatever, instead of really feeling what's going on inside of yourself. So if you feel that is happening, could you just relax and see if you could really experience what's going on? And instead of talking about what do you think should happen or shouldn't happen, or making other people feel guilty, instead just share what your experience is. When that situation happened, I feel this is what happens inside of myself. This situation makes me very fearful or very jealous. And when I'm in this situation, this or that kind of thought is coming up. And this is the experience that I have. This is how I feel about it. Instead of saying like, when you did this, then I felt jealous, and you shouldn't do that, or if you didn't do that, then I wouldn't have that feeling, or kind of doing any, having some kind of responsibility on the other person. Rather, just feeling your experience and just sharing it, and see what is going to happen. What is going to happen if you apply that, and see if you could be vulnerable from a deep, authentic place, and see what's going to happen with your friendships, relationships, or with the things that are difficult for you. Maybe you're going to be able to let go of them more easily, or to let go of the heaviness. So let me know how that goes. Let me know in the comments if you have ever experienced either real deep vulnerability, or if you have experienced this whining, and what are your experiences with that. And if you liked the video, please hit the like button. And if you haven't yet, please consider subscribing to see more of those videos. And maybe you want to watch some more of my videos. This one is the one that YouTube thinks you would like the most. And this one is my most recent video. So have fun watching and have a great day. Goodbye, everyone.